My TV show came and went. I'm going to post a link here in that first opening box underneath my video. It was, I can't remember what they called it, but it was a program on Canada's global television network on prime time devoted to this question of polyglots, or they choose the term hyperpolyglots, which I must say I think is a ridiculous term. Let me just say that. Polyglot is polyglot. I like the word linguist. People who speak many languages. Once you've got 5, you can make it 10, you can make it 15. I don't think it makes much difference. I was a bit disappointed. Keith Swain, who has a channel here at YouTube, calls himself the Canadian linguist, and whom I got to know, and who's a great guy. He and I flew out from Vancouver. Alexandre, who is another very nice fellow who came from Winnipeg, although he's originally from Quebec, to participate. We flew all the way out there. We were in a conversation with a total of 5 of us, including Axel from Toronto and James, who's also from Toronto. And we spoke for 2 hours in a very interesting, free-flowing discussion about language learning and so forth and so on. And I think we managed to survive to the tune of about a minute and a half, which I guess is inevitable. But I thought our discussion was quite interesting, and I certainly enjoyed getting to know all those people, or getting to know them better in the case of Keith. So I was annoyed that we didn't have more of our discussion. I was also annoyed at the sort of suggestion, although they didn't really come out conclusively and say so, but the implication that somehow someone who speaks 10 or 15 languages is strange. And this is an idea that I think, again, this Michael, I think, Erard, who wrote the book Babel No More, kind of dances around the edges of this position, but doesn't come out and say so. But there seems to be the suggestion that there's something different about the brains of people who can speak many languages. And I don't believe this is the case, except to the extent that as you learn anything, your brain changes. And if you are a violinist, your brain will change the more you play the violin. I mean, they've done surveys to show that that part of your brain, for example, that controls the movements of your fingers will get larger. The famous London taxi drivers whose part of the brain which controls detailed things that relate to names of streets and where they're located, that's going to grow. So yeah, if you go to the trouble of learning 10 or 15 languages, your brain is going to be a little bit different. However, there's just too many people. I mean, I'm studying Czech now, and I'm listening to my my wonderful series on Czech history, and so this Czech nationalist of the early 19th century, František Palacký, is introduced. He spoke 15 or 16 languages. Well, of course, because he lived in Austria at that time, the Austrian Empire. He spoke Czech, German, Slovakian, Hungarian, and Croatian. And then there were so many languages there that Latin was the common language in the church, so he spoke Latin. And I can't remember what other languages he spoke. But there are any number of countries. I've heard that in Ethiopia, it's not uncommon for people to speak 4 or 5 languages. If you live in an area where there are a lot of different languages spoken, you're going to end up speaking a lot of different languages. Don't tell me that all those people are musical, left-handed, have immune deficiencies, or whatever other strange things that they mentioned on this TV program. I firmly believe that language learning is a matter of the determination of someone, their will, their desire, their interest, their need, their opportunity to speak first one language, then a second, then a third, and then if they decide to pursue learning more languages, they learn more of them. It's not more complicated than that. The most difficult language is the first foreign or non-native language that we learn, and that was my experience, because we don't know that we can do it. We think it's just, and especially if you live in North America, or if in China, or even in Japan, or in any country where really you only need the local language. Now, I lived in Montreal, so theoretically I needed French, but in fact we didn't, because Montreal in the 50s was 1 million English-speaking people who didn't speak to the 2 million French-speaking people. That's no longer the case. Now you need it. So now there's a high percentage of bilingual people in Montreal amongst both the Francophones and the Anglophones. And in many cases, they're trilingual because they might speak Italian, French, and English extremely well. For example, our goaltender here in Vancouver on the Vancouver Canucks. I mean, he's almost native-like in Italian, French, and English. I don't think he's necessarily a weirdo with some immune deficiency. I think there are many people like him. I know many people in Montreal who today have their, call it, the language of their immigrant parents, and English and French, and in some cases one more. So to me, it's not something strange in your brain. It's more a matter of whether you apply yourself to the task, whether you have the opportunity, whether you choose to pursue it. And as I say, once you get past the first one, the second one becomes easier, and so on and so forth. Plus, you pick up some freebies. Richard Simcott was featured, which is great because I think Richard is a super guy. He was featured in this TV series, and he speaks a lot of languages. And he speaks languages from different language groups, albeit European, up until his recent venture into Turkish. But once you've got, he speaks Macedonian, Bulgarian, Serbian, Czech. I mean, those are very similar languages. French, Spanish, Portuguese. So once you venture out there, if you speak Dutch, you can learn Afrikaans. The German's not far behind. So if your goal is to rack up a lot of languages, which I'm not suggesting that's Richard's goal, but I'm saying that this whole numbers thing is a little bit misleading. Not only can you rack up numbers by studying related languages, but as I say, the more you learn, the more comfortable you get. So you'd be surprised if you decided to work towards speaking 20 languages. If you put in the time, you can do it. And I think Richard I've spoken to Richard. He's a perfectly normal guy. Luca's a normal guy. The guys that we spoke to down there were all normal guys. I'm a bit weird, but by and large, it's normal people who have a strong interest in speaking languages. Other people are interested in other things. So I just wanted I got quite annoyed, or I do get annoyed at this suggestion that somehow it's something weird. Are certain people more talented than others? Yes. Like, I think that Richard and Luca are both extremely talented. And especially because I've heard Luca speak so many different languages. His pronunciation is absolutely excellent. And my own view, and he'll probably disagree, I think it's because he's good at it. Why is he good at it? I think it's an attitude thing. I think he listens well. Although, to be fair again, his English sounds, to me, non-native like, which is fair enough. He speaks it extremely fluently. However, I've heard native speakers tell me that his German sounds native, his Swedish is almost native, his Russian, I thought his Chinese was pretty spectacular. Not to mention, give him the French, Spanish, that's Romance, whatever, he's lived there, fine. But it's these others that he does so well at. So I think he's talented, and I think the ability to, and I think Richard is talented, but I think and perhaps I have a greater facility to pick up or to get closer to native pronunciation than some other people. But as I've always said, I don't think that matters so much. I know people like, that I've worked with who really speak English well, but who have a very strong accent. It doesn't matter. So I think the accent is where there could be differences in talent, but I think the rest of it is more a matter of how much effort you're willing to put in, your attitude, your confidence, your determination, your interest, your love for the language, and all those other good things. So, thank you for listening. Bye for now.